can Russia really just step out of this isolation and go back to business as usual?
No, Russia will never go back to business as usual as long as Putin is in power. Let's not conflate diplomatic niceties and diplomatic etiquette and protocol for actual business as usual. Russia, as long as Vladimir Putin is in power in Moscow, there will never be business as usual between him and the Western world. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's possible. There might be some thaw, some normalization of relations, but we'll never get back to where we were in 2006 or even 2012. 2013 before Crimea, even going back to say 2020 before the full-scale invasion. Those days are gone, and we'll never get back to that sort of position. But dialogue with Putin will continue, I think, now. Trump has now set a new precedent. He's normalized that to a degree. He may want to go further himself. He's talked about, as well as having a Zelensky-Putin meeting, he's talked about having a trilateral where he would also take part. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but he might have another bilateral. He might feel that it's worth his while to go to Moscow and see if he can push the issue further there. He may decide that that's something he'd like to do. We shall see. But I don't think we should talk here in terms of a complete normalization or a return to business as usual. I don't think that's a realistic prospect for as long as Putin's in power.
Let's also talk about security guarantees. Many Ukrainians still remember the Budapest Memorandum promises that were broken when Russia invaded years later. Are there any guarantees today that can actually be trusted to protect Ukraine in a long run?
Well, the fundamental issue here that we always have to come back to again and again when we talk about security guarantees is quite simple. Will the West fight Russia on Ukraine's behalf? That's really what we're talking about here. That's what it all. We can talk in great detail about the different military aspects of this, the different triggers that could be used, the type of troops that could be deployed, the terms and conditions. But fundamentally, we have to ask: will Western governments fight Russia? Will they go to war with Russia on Ukraine's behalf? Now, call me cynical, but I'm inclined to say no, they will not do that. I find it very, very difficult to imagine any scenario where the Prime Minister of Great Britain or the President of France or any other European leader, never mind the President of America, would say, okay, we're going to war with Russia because the Russians are attacking Kramatorsk again, or because the Russians are pushing into Kharkiv Oblast, or whatever it may be. I think that's not a realistic scenario. So we need to be very clear about what we're really talking about here in terms of security guarantees. That is the fundamental issue we need to address. And if we can't provide that level of security for Ukraine, then what can the West really provide? What are we talking about here? I think the only really credible security guarantee the West can provide is to commit to maintaining a very strong, well-armed, well-equipped and fully supplied Ukrainian military, because the Ukrainian army is Ukraine's security guarantee, and it will remain so for decades to come. Of course, all support from Western countries is very welcome, but we shouldn't live under any illusions here. We shouldn't delude ourselves and think that Western countries are going to come into Ukraine and fight on Ukraine's behalf, because frankly, they're not. It's very unlikely that could happen in any scenario, and I don't think it would be in anyone's interests to maintain that sort of fantasy. It's not going to happen. So we need to look at what the realities are. I think the most realistic scenario is a very strong Ukrainian military with a very, very steady and guaranteed long-term support from the West in terms of material support, arms, weapons, technologies, joint projects to strengthen Ukraine's industrial defense base. So manufacturing of weapons in Ukraine, long-range missiles are very important here to be able to strike deep inside Russia as a deterrent to Russian attacks on Ukraine. Drones, of course, increased strengthening of the front lines and fortifications. The one area where I think we could talk about a direct Western military involvement would be in the air. I think it's possible, although it would again take a lot of discussion and a lot of military planning. It's possible to have some sort of an air shield over at least part of Ukraine along the lines of what we've seen in terms of Israel over the last year or so, where a number of Western countries, including Britain, France, and America, have provided air support cover to shoot down missiles and drones fired by Iran at Israel, and they've done so very successfully. That's not resulted in any escalation with Iran. I think that it would be possible to apply those lessons and perform a similar service or similar function over at least part of Ukrainian airspace, maybe West Ukraine, maybe West and Southern and Central Ukraine up to Kiev, up to the Dnieper River, covering Odessa in the south, of course, or all of West. And that would provide a significant degree of air cover for Ukraine, which would be very good in terms of allowing people to come back to the country to feel safer, allowing refugees to return, allowing investment to happen with the greatest certainty of security, allowing business to thrive, manufacturing to develop, and so on and so forth, without putting the West into a position where they might come into direct conflict with Russia. You can shoot down missiles and drones without coming into direct conflict with Russia. Whereas if there's troops on the ground, they get fired upon, they fire back, we have World War III. And that's something the West isn't going to do. But maybe with the air they could. That's the one area where I can see realistically the West being involved. Apart from that, when we talk about security guarantees, I think what we're really talking about is strengthening for the Ukrainian military and support for the Ukrainian military from the West.